Before dawn, Iran was already burning. Missile bases destroyed, scientists killed, air defenses neutralized. In the early hours of June 13th, Israeli drones and commandos crossed Iranian territory with surgical precision. Hours later, jets dropped more than 300 bombs on strategic facilities. The next day, the military chain of command was dismantled, and the nuclear reserves were compromised. That wasn't an answer. It was a preemptive attack, meticulously planned. Now it's time to understand the details and depth of this strategy. And why did this attack have the potential to change the balance of power in the Middle East forever? The war between Israel and Iran was never a question of if it would happen, but when. For years, there was no direct conflict between the two countries, but the battle always existed, mainly through their proxies. Hamas and Hezbollah have bled for the Iranians for years, relying on military and financial aid. The terrible and bloody terrorist attack carried out by Hamas on October 7, 2023 proved this, as did the Israeli retaliation that consumed Hamas and, unfortunately, thousands of innocent lives in Gaza. But these organizations were not only in Gaza and Lebanon. Iran made its contacts through Sudan, helping to keep the war between the Iranians alive. It helped put the routes on the map by attacking ships in the Red Sea. Iraqi militias acted on behalf of the Iranians after the disastrous American invasion in the early 2000s. Israel dealt with this during that time, working directly against groups like Hezbollah and Hamas, but also fighting in the shadows against the Iranians, mainly by assassinating some of their top leaders. However, if there was something that few could tolerate, it was the possibility of Iran continuing with its nuclear energy program. The Iranian Secret Service was one of the most active in trying to delay or eliminate the Iranian nuclear program. One of the first victims were the centrifuges, which are essential for uranium enrichment. In 2010, the Stuxnet malware infected Iranian computers. This virus falsified signals from industrial process control sensors so that an infected system would not be shut down due to detected anomalous behavior. This caused the interruption and destruction of Iranian centrifuges. In the same year, Masoud Ali Mohammadi, an Iranian nuclear physicist and professor at the University of Tehran, was leaving his house in Tehran when a motorcycle pulled up next to him. From a distance, the man who had parked it used a remote control to activate the explosives on the motorcycle. The explosion was so powerful that it almost flattened the scientist's car, killing him on the spot. Months later, two motorcyclists passed near the car of Majid Shariari, a nuclear scientist specializing in uranium enrichment. The men attached the C4 explosive to the car and fled. At a safe distance, they detonated the charge, killing Shariari and seriously injuring his colleague, Faraidon Abbas Davani. The next target would be Dariush Reza Ainejad, an electronics specialist suspected of developing detonators for nuclear warheads. He was in front of his house in 2011 when he was shot 5 times. He instinctively raised his hand and a bullet went through it. Another pierced his neck, killing him in front of his daughter and wife. A year later, a magnetic bomb was planted on the car of Mostafa Ahmad Roshan, a chemical engineer at the Natanz nuclear facility who was involved in uranium re-enrichment. The explosion killed him and injured his driver. But it was only in 2020 that Mossad reached one of its main targets, Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, the mastermind behind the Iranian nuclear program and a member of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. It was the most advanced Israeli attack up to that point. A car exploded in front of Fakhrizade's vehicle near Tehran, forcing his armored car to stop. Worried but relieved to be alive, the scientist relaxed. But gunmen ambushed Fakhrizade's car and opened fire. The security guards responded in a bloody shootout. 3 died and others were injured. According to Iranian sources, up to 4 attackers were killed. The scientist ended up dead in this ambush. There is still another version. A satellite command activated an automatic machine gun that fired, piercing the armor and taking Fakhrizade's life. But that wasn't enough to stop Iran. Despite efforts and negotiations the Iranians kept developing in this area, even with all the sanctions, the country grew stronger and stronger, forming alliances with nations like Russia and always maintaining hostility toward the United States and Israel. It's not as if Iran didn't have its reasons for the dispute with the Americans. What the United States did during the invasion of Iraq was a good reason to fear their interference. As for Israel, besides the obvious historical disputes involving the formation of its own state, it had a constant fear of what Iran with nuclear weapons could do. The Iranian nuclear program reached a worrying stage, with Iranian enrichment reaching 60% purity, a level that experts consider a decisive technical leap toward military grade. Intelligence reports revealed that the country had enough reserves to manufacture up to 15 nuclear devices in a short period of time. According to analysts, Iran positioned itself in a situation where if it chose to militarize, it could develop material for multiple nuclear warheads in less than 15 days. Although building a fully operational device would take approximately 6 months, the mere possibility put Israel on high alert. In response to criticism from the International Atomic Energy Agency, Iranian authorities intensified their activities, inaugurating a third enrichment facility in a strategic location described as fully protected against any external threat. This move was interpreted by international observers as a deliberate escalation of the already tense nuclear standoff. The Comprehensive International Atomic Energy Agency report from May 31, 2025 confirmed that Iran conducted undeclared nuclear activities at 4 sites up until the early 2000s. Since the United States' unilateral withdrawal from the 2015 agreement in 2018, Iran has limited International Atomic Energy Agency inspections, blocking access to camera footage and removing surveillance equipment. However, Iran did not completely expel the inspectors, using access as a bargaining chip in negotiations. Iran rejected the International Atomic Energy Agency reports, accusing the agency of relying on forged Israeli documents and claiming that Israel sabotaged and contaminated its facilities. Whether that's true or not, soon Israel would do even more than that. The seed of this operation was planted months before the main event. Agents of Mossad, the renowned Israeli intelligence agency, were systematically infiltrated into Iran. These were not quick incursions, but a sustained presence, with these agents living under meticulously constructed false identities. They could discreetly integrate into Iranian society for months to establish their cover stories. The initial task of these agents was gradual and discreet smuggling. They brought drones and explosives into Iranian territory. The smuggling was not done in large shipments to avoid detection. Instead, small components or devices could be disassembled and transported as parts to be reassembled at the destination. There is even a suggestion that parts could be manufactured via 3D printing inside Iran to facilitate the final assembly of the devices. The crucial point of this phase was the modification of common civilian vehicles, cars, vans, or even airplanes inside Iran itself. This meant that Israeli intelligence not only knew how to smuggle the material, but also had access to facilities or individuals capable of carrying out these adaptations discreetly. These disguised vehicles were then strategically positioned up to 20 kilometers from specific targets, the Iranian surface-to-air missile sites. The accuracy in locating these sites, including radars and launchers, demonstrates advanced signals intelligence and human intelligence capable of mapping the Iranian air defense networks and identifying vulnerabilities to bypass security perimeters. Mossad was more advanced inside Iran than the Revolutionary Guard realized. The Israelis had mapped the Iranian air defense networks and identified vulnerabilities to bypass the security perimeters. On Friday, June 13, 2025, those drones were remotely activated. They were not necessarily aimed at massive destruction, but rather at neutralizing the Iranian air defenses closest to the entry points of Israeli jets, missiles, or future operations. This meant disabling radars, command and control centers, or the missile launchers themselves, blinding or paralyzing Iran's immediate response capability. The signs of smoke and fire became evident throughout the country, including in the capital, Tehran. Almost simultaneously with the drone action, a second ground front was opened with the infiltration of Israeli Special Forces commandos into central regions of Iran. It is suspected that the unit involved was the Sayeret Matkal, specialized in covert operations, search and rescue in combat, counterterrorism, and hostage rescue. The speculation is that they were inserted by stealth helicopters or cargo aircraft, perhaps models already seen operating in Syria, such as the C-130 Hercules, or transport helicopters modified for long-range special operations. The mission of these commandos was to destroy Iranian anti-aircraft missile systems located in remote desert areas, possibly those that were not reached by the first wave of drones. That's why they use Spike non-line-of-sight missile launchers. The Spike missile family is known for its accuracy, and in the non-line-of-sight variant, it has a range of up to 30 kilometers. Its critical advantage lies in the ability to be fired from concealed positions. The Israeli commandos fired from concealed positions without the need for a direct line of sight to the target. The low firing signature, that is, less noise, smoke, or detectable heat, made them almost invisible that June night. Additionally, the ability to be guided in flight with a camera on the nose allowed the operator to adjust the target or even abort the mission if necessary. The accuracy of the Spike non-line of sight ensured shots with minimal error, ideal for pinpoint and static targets like the Iranian systems. Thermal images showed these commandos operating with night vision and using thermal blankets to reduce their heat signatures. Videos released by Israel less than 24 hours after the operation clearly showed that their troops were moving freely throughout Iran. The exfiltration of these commandos was possibly quick and discreet, as there was no news of their capture. Since at least 2024, infiltrated Israeli agents and Iranians recruited by Mossad were reportedly actively building a kamikaze drone base inside the city of Tehran itself, probably in a civilian house. The location was not random. The base was strategically positioned near the Isfahan Jabad base, one of the most protected sites in Iran. Known for housing long-range ballistic missile launchers, this proximity meant an almost instant attack on a high-value target. Around 3 in the morning, the drones were remotely activated, directly targeting this missile base. In addition, additional kamikaze drones were directed at high-value generals and scientists in Tehran. Israeli intelligence thoroughly studied the movement patterns and meetings of these individuals, culminating in a ruse. They reportedly tricked the top Iranian commanders into gathering at a specific location where they were then targeted. Those who weren't at the meeting were hunted down wherever they were. The primary goal of this decapitation tactic was to neutralize Iran's ability to retaliate and disrupt its chain of command. After the initial disabling of ground defenses and the disruption of command, Israel launched a massive and coordinated air campaign demonstrating its technological superiority. About 200 Israeli fighter jets, including the advanced F-35s, the versatile F-16s, and the powerful F-15s, took part in the attack. They flew through Syrian airspace, which had limited air defenses due to the civil war and the presence of Russian and Iranian forces, making a unified response difficult. The F-35s, although designed for stealth, are said to have used external fuel tanks to extend their range to reach Iran.
That's a tactical compromise.
Although it increases the range, the presence of external tanks can reduce the aircraft's stealth signature. However, given the success in neutralizing the Iranian defenses, the benefit of increased range outweighed the cost of slightly reduced stealth.
They dropped 500-pound guided bomb unit, 31 precision bombs from Aden, guided by global positioning system capable of hitting targets with high effectiveness.
The initial estimate of 330 munitions fired from the air was probably conservative. What was seen was Iran burning, with the bodies of its command and its defenses disappearing amid the fire, smoke, and rubble. With Iranian air defenses significantly compromised by ground operations, Israeli aircraft enjoyed unquestionable air superiority. They carried out enemy air defense suppression missions, a crucial tactic to neutralize radars and missiles, clearing the way for the following attacks. Israeli jets flew deep into Iranian airspace, launching long-range missiles up to 400 kilometers. More than 100 targets were hit in 5 waves of attacks, including the Vital City nuclear facility in Natanz, a primary target for its uranium enrichment capabilities, and the ballistic missile facilities in Bitkane. The response of Iran's air defense revealed its limitations. Instead of modern missiles, they resorted to using 23mm anti-aircraft cannons that fired flak, explosive shells that detonated in the air, creating a cloud of fragments. The sight of flak in the sky, with a range of only 3 kilometers, a remnant of World War II against modern jets flying at high altitudes, was visual proof of the destruction of their most advanced air defense systems. The Iranians claimed to have shot down 2 Israeli F-35s, but without any evidence or by using old photos or artificial intelligence images. This proved to be nothing more than desperate internal propaganda to reassure their population and maintain the image of strength. The numbers varied, with alarming reports coming out of Tehran during those hours. It was hard to confirm. Some said that about 25 Iranian nuclear scientists were targeted, with at least 6 killed. The loss of such specialized personnel could cause significant delays in Iran's nuclear program. At least 30 high-ranking Iranian military commanders were killed, disrupting the chain of command and creating a critical leadership vacuum. Approximately 40 Iranian air defense systems were destroyed, according to Israel, leaving vast areas of Iran vulnerable to future airstrikes. The destruction of Iranian ballistic missile launches by Israeli ground operators explained the staggered nature and perhaps the initial ineffectiveness of Iran's missile retaliation. During the morning, the buildings bore blackened scars from the fire that precisely claimed important souls from Iran's command body. It was striking how the holes showed how Israel was able to reach the heart of the Iranian regime. The confirmed deaths of the Revolutionary Guard commander and the chief of the military general staff were a colossal strategic blow, affecting the morale, planning, and long-term operational capability of the Iranian armed forces. The fact is that no one is prepared for a blow like this.
Iran confirmed 78 dead and more than 320 injured, claiming that most of them were civilians. One of the most intriguing observations was the absence of an immediate and coordinated response from Hamas or Hezbollah, Iran's proxy forces in the region. This raised questions about Iran's ability to quickly activate its networks or whether its priorities have changed after the extent of the damage suffered. Iran's retaliation came shortly after. Unlike previous attacks that targeted military bases, this time Iran targeted population centers and residential areas in Israel, a clear escalation mirroring the Israeli attacks in Tehran. Apartment buildings were hit. And Israel's military headquarters, the Kiryat, which is equivalent to the Pentagon in the United States, was hit. A war correspondent described an entire block as wiped off the map, highlighting the intensity of the impacts. Iran fired 150 ballistic missiles, not counting the drones that also flew through the skies. They came down like a meteor over the Israeli cities. The lights lit up in the skies like a horror of divine punishment. The sound of the sirens announced the fire plunging down. From the ground came the Israeli defenses, trying to fight the Iranian revenge traveling through the air. Although most were intercepted by Israel's anti-missile defense systems, such as the Iron Dome, several missiles managed to evade the defenses and hit their targets. These attacks caused the deaths of at least 3 Israeli citizens and injured more than 40. Despite the volume, Iran was not able to inflict strategic blows comparable to those it received. In direct response to these attacks on population centers, Israel began a new phase of attacks targeting Iran's economic sector, specifically its oil fields, which are vital to the Iranian economy. In the darkness before the dawn of a new day of war, Israel delivered a devastating blow to the strategic heart of Iran. From north to south, the skies were torn by missiles that plunged into missile bases in Tabriz, nuclear facilities in Natanz and Isfahan, refineries in Bushehr, and gas terminals in Bandar Abbas. Tehran shook with explosions at its Ministry of Justice in Parchim and in the shadows of Mebarad. In Shiraz, radars were obliterated. In Machado, fire was consuming the airport. The radar in Subash, another sentinel of air defense, turned to ashes. Behind the smoke, a brutal message emerged. No city, no base, no mountain was unreachable. It was more than just an attack. It was the demonstration that the entire map of Iran had become a visible and vulnerable hunting ground. There were rumors that cars exploded, claiming more lives of Iranian scientists and officials. Mossad was still roaming the country. Cars were seen heading to special flights at one of the airports, suggesting the escape of important individuals. Thousands of people began to flee Tehran, realizing that the country could not defend them with the confidence that had been advertised. Satellite images showed damage to Iran's nuclear bases, even though Israel lacked the bombs necessary to penetrate deep underground and destroy vaults and structures, something for which they would need to ask the United States for support. There were even rumors of 2.5 magnitude earthquakes near one of the attacked areas. It was also said that the centrifuges responsible for uranium enrichment in Natanz were probably destroyed because they were running during the attack. The force of the attack and the power loss would have damaged the equipment and even caused radiation leaks. On the night of June 14th to 15th, 2025, the sky over Israel was once again torn apart by fire and steel. The roar of the sirens echoed through Tel Aviv at 3:17 in the morning, interrupting the sleep of those who still dared to rest amid the growing tension. Iran's counterattack, named True Promise 3, began to unfold with a fury not seen since the darkest days of the Middle East's recent history. The first explosions hit the heart of the country. Tel Aviv trembled under the impact of ballistic missiles that crossed the skies, some slipping through the electrified skies guarded by the Iron Dome. One of them hit a residential tower in Rishon-LeZion directly, a fireball that lit up the coastline like an inverted aurora of destruction. 2 people died instantly. 20 others, including children and the elderly, were rescued from the rubble and smoke. In the north, the Arab city of Tana was mourning its dead. 4 Palestinian women, mothers, sisters, daughters, were swallowed by the brutal impact of a missile that did not distinguish between military targets and civilian lives. It was a cruel reminder. War does not ask for permission when it crosses the doors of humanity. Batyan, south of Tel Aviv, suffered like rarely before. The missile fell without warning on a housing complex, destroying entire apartments and taking 6 lives from the cities, including 2 primary school-aged children. The muffled screams of the survivors, the car alarms, the cries of parents digging with their own hands, everything formed a distressing symphony of modern warfare. At the same time, Yerushalayim watched helplessly as the sinister spectacle of glowing trails crossed the skies. The holy city, disputed for millennia, now saw the conflict take on a new form, ballistic, remote, but still deeply human. But the targets were not just civilians. As I said, a missile fell on the Kiryat military base, headquarters of the Israel Defense Forces in Tel Aviv. Although most of the structures remained, the impact was symbolic and precise. Iran was showing that it could target the heart of the Israeli military machine. In Rehoboth, another symbol of the Israeli spirit, the Weizmann Institute of Science, was hit. Shattered glass destroyed laboratories, knowledge turned to ruins. It was a wound to the scientific pride of a nation. It was hard to know how long Israel's defenses would last in the face of such an intense barrage. But it was also hard to know how much power Iran would have to resist the Israeli airstrikes. About a third of the Iranian ballistic missile launchers were destroyed. Bombs exploded over them wherever they tried to hide. The F-35s carried out their attacks with impunity, flying over Iranian skies and shattering the pride of Tehran's military power. F-14 jets, once among the most renowned fighters, became scrap on the ground after an attack. Iranian soldiers trying to shoot down Israeli drones were spotted in the mountains. Both were incinerated. There were reports that some of the targets hit were decoys, but even so, many real ones kept burning. That fire also reached Iranian leaders who did not last days after replacing their fallen colleagues. The war continued, with columns of smoke still dancing among the broken rooftops. The streets of Israel were covered with shrapnel, silenced sirens, and red eyes. It wasn't just retaliation, it was a message. Iran had responded with fury, with precision, with pain, and the world watched in silence. Now what comes next? Another wave? A full escalation? Or just the silence that comes before an even bigger war? Because after Friday, June 13th, the Middle East would never be the same again.